Welcome to the Rural Innovator Podcast, where startups grow, innovation thrives, and Rural gets its tech on. This is a place where we shine a spotlight on the exciting developments in innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship happening right here in our rural communities. From new startups to exciting tech developments and the inspiring people driving it all, we're here to keep you informed and inspired. Whether you're a tech enthusiast, an entrepreneur, or just curious about the innovative spirit in rural innovation, this podcast is for you. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the stories and the ideas shaping the future of rural innovation. I'm your host, Gordon Moore, Executive Director of SEF. With me today is Tanya Andrus. She is the Executive Director, Innovation and Applied Research at the new Center of Sustainable Innovation for Southeast College. Welcome to our first show, Tanya.
This is so exciting. Hello, Gordon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So what we want to talk about today on our first show is what's happened for our community in Estevan, Saskatchewan, Canada, and how we became one of the front leaders of rural innovation, and just to help inspire people to also give like a linchpin to all our future podcasts of where we're coming from. So with that in mind, I mean, I just moved here a few years ago, but could you give us a bit of a history prior to the creation of the Southeast Tech Hub and how we got here?
I'll do my best.
Okay,
I like
thanks.
to say that I'm new to Estevan and I've only been here for 21 years. I'm someone who was raised in Saskatchewan and ended up marrying a farmer and came here. I've been lucky enough to be at Southeast College now for a few years and in this position because of all the innovative things that have been happening in the region. In fact, our center was started based on some of the outcomes of whether it was research, whether it was inspiration, whether it was synergies of good ideas, and that includes your involvement here as well. So I would say when you ask me what started it was this notion that Estevan and the Southeast region had to change, and that there was this very, very pressing coal transition. And that's been the impetus, I would say, almost the kick in the behind for our community to look around and recognize that times were changing and how could the community change? How could the community adapt?
And then from what I understand from there, a number of community members went up to Regina, where Regina has a tech hub, an incubator called Cultivator. And they saw that and they thought it would be a really good thing to bring back to our community. I personally, I ran and co-founded a software company back in Vancouver in 2007 and ended up here. That's a whole different story. Ended up here.
It's a great story.
It's a great story. That's true. Okay.
Tell it another. Maybe
Sure.
not. Tell it another.
So yeah, my wife's originally from Iran, and she's a doctor, and Saskatchewan offered her a great job. So we came here, and I think this would resonate with a lot of people. Is like, why would you in the tech industry in an urban setting want to come to a rural community and continue on with what you're doing? And for us, we had it. We had had enough with the like you're always peaked at this high level of anxiety. You know, even with two decent incomes, you can't afford housing, the traffic, the noise,
Commuting.
the community, and also just looking for some solid, good people to be a part of your social network. And so that's why we chose to leave. And it was surprising I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was going to do all this video stuff. And then I came here and I was surprised to find that this community of, I don't know, 12,000 people, 2 hours away from the nearest international airport in Canada, had decided to create a tech hub and an incubator. And I'd been around that with my job. And I thought that was the craziest idea ever.
No, the best part was your TikToks. So you were making all those TikTok videos about your adventure, trying to bring your EV here.
Yeah.
And my favorite part, and the reason that people really connected with you in this community was that you reflected us back onto ourselves. And you told us that, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe how nice the person that I was renting this apartment from. Can you believe a person lent me their pickup? Or whatever that story was
Yeah.
on that one TikTok video. But you reflected us and we recognized as a community or as people living in rural Saskatchewan that well, the place that we lived in, first of all, was desirable. Why wouldn't someone want to come here and leave the big city behind? I mean, yeah, that was my one. Again, that was the reason that you were able to connect immediately with people in this community, is because it'd be a reflection back to us.
And there's another part of that story that's really good, is that let's talk about like innovation for a second, how innovation is in the city and how it is in rural. And the story behind that TikTok was that I had purchased an EV before we had decided to leave Vancouver. And during the time when we had to move here, Vancouver had experienced, the storm of the century, and it had wiped out all the railways, and except for one little dinky mountain road. And it was during that time, COVID, so we weren't allowed to cross the border. So my plan was to put the EV on a train and ship it out here, but I couldn't. And so I was like, let's drive it. And so when I went to my first charger, it was like, this is crazy. It's January. I'm about to drive an electric vehicle halfway across Canada in the middle of winter at minus 25 to minus 40. This is stupid. Let's TikTok it, because that'd be hilarious. But the conversation that came out of that really, like, it showed that there was curiosity about within, because I guess the way the algorithm works on TikTok is it started showing my journey to people in Estevan as I was coming. And you could see that there was a curiosity about an electric vehicle, about it working in the winter. Sure, there's politics in there. There always is when you talk about innovation and disruption. But there was just this natural curiosity. And to the point when I showed up here, people were curious about my electric vehicle. This notion that I had living in Vancouver in an urban setting about rural, what made me on guard about having an electric vehicle in a rural community. And I've never had any challenges on a personal level. There's curiosity. Of course, people have their opinions. That's totally fine and valid. But I love that story because it's not just about me or my journey per se. It's about the natural curiosity and innovativeness about rural, and it also addresses the prejudices that urban communities have towards rural with regards to innovation.
I think so. And so when you got here, Estevan already had this tech hub had already started.
Yep.
I was part of the Innovation Council,
Yep.
which was an arm's length sort of council that was trying to, again, respond to this issue. There was an idea that we would host a conference, a tech conference. We announced it as a council, and they were kind of muddling through, trying to figure out what that was going to look like. We had a vague plan, and we had some initiatives that we were going to do, and of course, having this tech hub, an incubator modeled on other incubators, but not really recognizing the uniqueness of it being rural, maybe not really recognizing that those were special qualities, versus maybe we needed, again, someone from outside to take a peek at, to reflect that back again.
Yeah, and then what I saw, to fill in that story, is I was still running my software company because I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I went online and I just wanted to rent an office or shared office space. It's so funny now when I think about it, like in a rural community having a shared office space. And I couldn't find anything. And then I had seen an article in our local newspaper about Mayor Roy Ludwig talking about creating the tech hub and why it was important and why the community got through it, because the community was tired of boom and bust. It was just so hard to manage services. It was so hard to manage economic development. It was so hard for the average person to figure out what the value of their home is. And so this was a way forward. And that really connected to a lot of the positives when I got here. So I reached out and I said, I'm looking for an office. Long story short, they said, you can have an office here at the Tech Hub in exchange for mentoring. And from that, there was the grand opening of the Tech Hub here. And I was asked to judge a pitch competition put on by the grade 8 students at our local school. And that completely blew me away. They would have won a pitch competition in Vancouver or Toronto. And like I just to fill in some of the gaps of my understanding of technology, like I have an office in Australia and I did a lot of my business in the States. I had exposure around the world to understand it, and these kids would have competed and won. And a good example was these two young women. They took the moisture sensor from what they had in the farm and put it into household pots in the soil. And the idea being, when you came home, Alexa or Siri would say, "Go water that plant." And why that is just blew me away is they didn't create anything new per se in the individual pieces. They just looked at a new process of doing something awesome. But then on the business side of the sense, it was like, there's a market for this. Like these kids could really do it.
I actually
You were
saw
there,
that.
right?
No,
Yeah.
I actually saw that product coming out for 2025 at this big tech conference. So I saw a product of a pot, a monitoring pot that tells you a lot of levels, including the water. But I
So they were
immediately
on it 3
tweaked. I
years ago.
immediately tweaked to those kids' product that this was a new 2025 product. It's just a very simple
Yeah.
pot for a plant that has a moisture sensor in it and other, again, sensors for the plant. But I immediately went back to that original invention of the kids from Estevan, Saskatchewan.
So they had figured this out. A rural community, they had already figured this out. And at the time, what dawned on me when they all left is the way rural innovation is educated is it's not. Like it seems like in rural communities, and not just Saskatchewan, as I've done my thing and talked to people in the States, and we'll talk about that more, and as well as in Malaysia and in Australia, is that the educational opportunities for innovation and technology in rural communities is just not there. And so what I realized is these amazing kids with these skills, when they walked out that door, they were done. There was nothing more for them. And that they would
It's okay to get emotional. I know you get emotional.
no.
I know you get emotional.
Because it's not right. But they would have to leave. And it's interesting. Since I've been doing this for a while, there's a Stats Canada report showing that 60% of youth leave rural Canada to pursue jobs in innovation and technology. And what's interesting is, rural communities, what's one of the big things they complain about? The youth are leaving.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this to me, just let's put these two things together and solve this. And the community already saw this. So I wanted to be a part of bringing that in and doing all that. So I guess what I'm saying here in our story for those who are listening is that rural innovation isn't just about business, it's about community development.
100%.
Yeah. And that's where you jumped in.
Well, I guess so. But I mean, there was also quite a bit of similar synergies happening at the college. So again,
Yeah.
Southeast College is a regional college here. Many of the courses that we offer are trades-based, and the courses that we offer are generally with the Sask Polytech. There's three big institutions in Saskatchewan. There's the University of Regina, the University of Saskatchewan, and Sask Polytech. And so the regional colleges mostly serve the Sask Polytech courses and availability. And with something and a bold and ambitious new department called the Center of Sustainable Innovation that was launched in Estevan at our Estevan campus. It was a response again to, I'll call it to an opportunity of a community in transition, a community with a lot of energy towards transformation, towards ambitious goals and following through with them, whether it's building a brand new hockey rink or convincing a government to put a dam here, a generation ago. Something like the center could fly here because there would be community support. And so it was initially designed for entrepreneurship support, classes that were really relevant to our community, which you're going to speak to, I'm sure. And the third piece is applied research. And I mean, this was a year and a half ago, and we are cruising towards achieving all of those goals, much in the same way that you're hitting the similar milestones with the tech.
Let's dive into education for a sec. So not to pit a province against a province, but more look at, because I know other people who are going to listen to this podcast might not even live in Canada, but they're looking at one of the challenges that they're facing with the idea of innovation and technology in rural communities, education. looking at British Columbia in the 1990s, they allowed the rural colleges, Caribou College, Okanagan College, what have you, to get accredited and become universities. And from that, I have a number of um, family members in rural communities that, well, in Kamloops and Salmon Arm, that ended up getting their degree in computer science, and they never had to leave these communities. And in Salmon Arm and Kamloops, if you don't know, I think Kamloops is pushing maybe 100,000, but Salmon Arm is the same size as Estevan, 10,000. And now they have these wonderful jobs as programmers for Netflix. And I look at that British Columbia, how they've created that wheel and how other rural jurisdictions can look at that as an option. Is this something that resonates for you when you look at education at that level?
I would say overall education has had just such a huge shift towards online education. So in the past, the colleges have been able to offer university courses, and we never really a degree program, but just university courses, and the demand for that completely evaporated during COVID because everyone went online. And so I mean, we have to talk about the fact that, I mean, so many people, even high school students go attend university or attend high school online, right? And so for us and for the colleges, there is again a completely different structure in Saskatchewan, because of the Colleges Act, where regional colleges in Saskatchewan offer education that can be provided through Sask Polytech. So then,
And I'm sure other jurisdictions around the world have a very similar setup where the rural educators have to go through an urban center to get these courses,
certainly.
right? Yeah.
Now, there is some flexibility if an institution can create their own programming, if the programming has I would say a certification that is only that would be something like a micro credential or continuing education, particularly now, and particularly when we get to talking about something like computer science, employers are interested in knowledge. They're interested in skills. They are not necessarily interested in your certification or your computer science degree from a particular university. If you're employable, if you're work ready, that's what an employer wants. And so we're trying to fill that gap here at the college. So that again fulfills the destiny, fulfills the mandate of what the center was started. Did you want to talk about your inspiration to get computer science going here in Estevan?
Uh, so many things that inspire me to get things going. What part of this journey that you and I have been on would you
Well,
talk
I'm
about?
just talking about the computer science and how, I mean, again, you recognized it as something that would, and again, reflecting ourselves onto ourselves,
Yeah.
that the digital divide was compounding here in the rurals, where it is all over rural Saskatchewan, that we don't have computer science past grade 10.
Why would we want computer science in a rural community? Like, what was my driving thing on all of that? And if you look at disruption, like recent history, what has happened? So a lot of the disruption hits industries that are based in urban settings. Like a good example is the banking and financing, or the legal profession with regards to filing and all that stuff. But where are we now? What are the two biggest disruptions currently that we're going through? And that is agriculture and that is energy. And those two things are happening in our rural communities. And I didn't personally realize, especially on the energy side of things, like if you're driving your car right now listening to this, or you're at home watching this on your phone or TV or what have you, even the gas powering your car or the electrons powering all of that, if you follow that backwards, it all ends up being generated at a rural community. So all these changes that are happening in the world are affecting us in the rural community. Then you look at agriculture, right? And you're a farmer, so like you know that like a John Deere or a Case, that's a computer with wheels.
Well, I remember you telling stories and coming up with the data that like miners don't mine right now
Good point.
with a pickaxe anymore. They're operating machinery that's highly digital, right? Right at the rock face. It's basically you're operating a computer yourself, right? Whether you're in the combine or in the mine, you need computer skills. There's a huge digital divide.
That was interesting. Just to protect confidentiality, I had a good conversation with a C-suite member of one of the large mining company, and they said their new mine, the miner can be in an urban setting, remoted in, to whatever equipment that's underground, and that they only have 2 or 3 people underground now. But if you put all that together, our youth, a lot of people will say we don't need computer science in our education system in rural communities because we need people who weld. We need mechanics. 100% valid. Totally 100% valid. But we need youth who can work on that combine that's now computerized, right? We need youth who can work in a nuclear facility because that's what's happening. We need youth who can run a microgrid that's looking after, a data center that's going to be in a rural setting. We need those skills. So I always want to hear that. I challenge people back who say that and say, yes, blue collar is extremely important, but I will argue with you to the end of the day that computer science is a trade, and it is blue collar now, and that we need that in our community.
Well, and just in terms of where our world is going, countries with a high literacy of digital skills are more developed and more advanced, and that's a metric that we use for whether it's productivity or whether we measure our advancement in our economic success. Digital literacy is right up there. So if we don't train our youth in the rurals, we're starting from a deficit. And I think that as we are here in rural Saskatchewan, we have an obligation to offer that to students to be able so that kids don't have to leave to go take their education. Whether they're graduating out of high school and they want to work back home or where they want to get a job, they should be able to stay here and learn computer science at home.
And those who are listening for an urban community right now, not saying that's cute and that's nice, here's something that would affect them: productivity. So if we don't have the right skill in the right job, your nation's productivity goes down. That affects everyone's ability to have a decent income. A good example is if you don't have the right skill set of a person doing a farmer, if they don't have the skill set to keep their combine working, create a smart farm, work on those sensors, the food productivity goes down, right? And the costs go up. Same with energy. So it affects everyone, urban and rural. But let's get into how did we solve this problem? So a wonderful gentleman, Ryan Gustafson, who I think he's working on his master's, or he's completed his master's
he's
in
working
AI.
on his master's.
Yeah, in AI, lives in our community. There's a lot of surprise in this community, a lot of well-educated people here that we just don't always realize. That's another story, another day. He comes in and he's like, I want to help out with the tech hub. I think what you're doing we're so needing it in rural communities. I want to help out. So we had a good old chat. And then he ended up in a position in his life where it's for him to say, but he needed to change things around. And so I got him connected with you. And then we were talking about creating a one-room schoolhouse, right?
That's the idea. And we didn't keep the name of the one-room schoolhouse, but we certainly kept that metaphor that students will come because we're in a rural. We're not going to be able to start with first-year university level for everyone for a cohort. But just like in a one-room schoolhouse, you can have an advanced student mentoring a student who's just beginning, and everyone is taught by the same teacher. And Ryan came forward with a proposal. It was a terrific sell. We had an administrator at the college that took a risk and said, let's run it. Let's try to run this computer science training through projects. And the idea is that the projects are real life projects, and that we are going to be serving a client who has a problem they need to be solved. And the computer science students then find the scope of that problem, work through the solutions, and then present that solution at the end of the course. And from the very first cohort and the very first pilot, it has been a complete and total success. And whether that is because of their instructor, who is Ryan, or because we've had great project partners, and thank you, Gord, the Tech Hub was our very first project partner. But since that pilot and that cohort, we've gone on to do a second cohort, and we've been able to engage real community members with real problems that our computer science students are solving. And hopefully I can go into greater detail later, but the idea was innovative, and it was a
In
perfect
itself,
fit.
it was innovative.
Perfect fit for our community and for the level of students that we have, and for what within the Colleges Act the center could achieve. And so we are, continuing to do and continuing to move forward very quickly with applied research at Southeast College and solving problems, real problems in the community for our clients or our partners.
There's a whole bunch of parts of that whole program that you created that I just want to highlight so people could really understand. And one is that, coming back to this thought that, computer programming is a trade. A trade is where you are an apprentice and you learn those skills in theory, but there's someone who with you to help fill in how this works in the real world. And that's very true. Like, you can learn the theory of a GUI, of a interface, a graphics interface. But to have the skill set to make that interface work properly with a person, you need someone who's already done it to look over your shoulder and help you, like an apprentice. So that part of your program is just, it nails it. I think that's fantastic, because it's not where other computer programs where you learn theory and then you have a placement out into a business for 6 months. You're always an apprentice, and I think that's great.
And we can see the opportunity. In fact, following our very first presentation of our product, one of the students was offered a job right from our presentation. And maybe we should be talking about where this was presented, because that's one of my favorite milestones.
Let's get to this, because there's a couple more points I really want to get to that, because I need to show that we need to show that this is such a good idea. But the other thing I think that will speak volumes to people about this, those youth didn't leave. They stayed here and had the option in their rural community with their family, supporting them, living at home, doing what they needed to do. They learned computer science.
They are currently learning computer science. And it's designed in such a way, if you imagine that one-room schoolhouse, you don't just take one course and then you're done.
Yeah.
You can repeat, and each cohort, each time you take that course, you're facing a more challenging project, a more challenging facet of that. You learn different skills within that. You're acquiring different programming languages, or a different piece of a more complex puzzle or a more complex problem. And so we're on now our third cohort, and anticipating that we'll see return students. And again, they're building and growing that knowledge and building their portfolio with these projects that they can then go share with prospective employers.
And they can also not only fill in that gap that a lot of people aren't realizing is in rural communities for computer science, they can create technology companies in a rural community, which will then, it will feed upon itself, and it will diversify your economy, because a lot of rural communities are around one or two, maybe three if you're lucky, different types of industry. And now you've added this other one, which will then, those people such as myself who wanted to get out of the city center could get a job with their skill set. Another, it's just such a good chicken egg scenario. I love it.
And I hope to be putting our students, or we have a prospective entrepreneur, into your pitch competition. So it's circular, right? So we're creating people. We're not creating, but we're offering people the opportunity to build their skills. And then when they're ready to take a company that's the next step, then there's entrepreneurship support here at the Tech Hub.
Yeah, and before we get into the conference, because I know that's where you were leading, and we'll get there in a sec, but let's talk about the pitch comp. So we got together and created a pitch competition here. The winner got $22,000, and the money was provided by SaskPower and SaskTel. The idea of that was also within the community to say, like, you guys are innovators, and I want to talk about this more later on, so let's not forget. But here's a bunch of people. There was 4 groups who got up and on a stage and pitched to the community their rural idea that they created in the rural community that would really help their idea, help the community move forward. That was really the goal. Like, part of the goal, yes, was to create new businesses, but part of the goal, like as you were saying, is to reflect the rural community back to themselves on, you're actually pretty freaking amazing. This is the stuff that you've done here. And what I thought interesting about those pitch competition, those judges, I think it was an hour and a half
Well, and you brought in such high-profile
to
judges.
figure out like
who's
who's
going to
gonna
win?
win.
Who's going to win?
They were all so good. And speaking
And
also
so
of
who did
rural,
win?
and speaking of who did win, and even to this day, I don't know how you could choose all of them, but was two grade 12 students and 4-H.
And they were competing against adults.
But they were 4-H.
Yeah.
Like, what a wonderful program in rural communities. 4-H, the way they teach kids how to speak, present, look at the world, innovate, play around. Wow.
And actually be entrepreneurs.
Definitely. When I should, everyone was like, so what did they do to win? So what they had created is a portable irrigation system that could do a quarter section of land or a half section of land. So if you're not in Canada or a part of the world that does sections of land, our sections of lands are 1 mile by a mile. So to water that kind of property in a portable way where you take that equipment and put it on a truck or get pulled by a truck down to the next section of land is interesting. And they're playing with ideas about well, I shouldn't give out too much because it's their IP, but they're playing with ideas on how they can water things. I should stop to protect them, but it was really, really neat. The other thing I do, and then we'll talk about the conference for a sec, why I just want to talk about something that I've learned about why is rural innovation really important. And I had gone back to help fill in the gaps in something I wanted to do for myself in my learning journey and did the MIT's Innovation and Technology Acceleration Program. And in all of that, it was really, really interesting because I got to talk to people in different industries, innovative technology around the world. And I would bring up, hey, I'm doing this rural innovation and stuff like that. And one of my professors brought up something that was really, really interesting. And he's like, Gord, innovation, it doesn't happen in the core. It happens on the peripherals. And he sent me this study. I have it here just to remind myself. Amir Goldberg from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. What they did is they used a large language model, AI, and they grabbed together, let me get this right, they grabbed together various amounts of, what did they do? They got 5 million congressional floor transcripts, and they got 4.2 million court decisions over 50 years, and transcripts from 108,000 quarterly earnings. And they put that through a large language model. And they said, when was the first time this idea, this word, what have you, showed up? When was it? Okay, great. Where did that happen? It happened on the peripheral. And I think a lot of people who kind of understand this will know that a lot of new innovative ideas come from small agile companies, and then the bigger companies purchase those companies for that idea. But you can also transcribe that to rural. A lot of the challenges that have to be overcome happen in rural first, and so the rural communities figure those challenges out. Eventually, those ideas get brought to the center where they're commercialized and brought out to the rest of the world. So if our economy right now, worldwide economy, is being driven by innovation and technology, and I can point to the fact that Elon Musk is the wealthiest person, love or hate it, in the world, and he's done that through innovation and technology, and you even go back to Bill Gates. You can easily provide evidence to prove that our economy right now is driven by innovation and technology. So again, there's another reason why rural innovation needs to be incubated and accelerated because it's good for your own economy, not just the rural economy, but the nation's economy or your trade group's economy. So that I thought that was really interesting. And also to that, we Dr. Eric Grimson, the chancellor of MIT, is born and raised here, and we asked him to come out, and he came out and did this most powerful presentation. I still get goosebumps when I think about it. And it also speaks to like rural boy, like Saskatchewan boy, like he might be, this big person doing these crazy things in an urban setting, but because he's rural, he remembers his roots and he comes out here. But what he talked about at the end was like, look, if you have two students, one from Lexington, Massachusetts, right, where MIT is, highly educated, very wealthy, and you have a kid from Beanfate. It's just a small community just outside of Estevan. What's the population?
Few hundred.
Few hundred people. Yeah, and you're hours away from an urban setting. And you had these two kids, and they applied to MIT, right? And they had the exact same score. He said, and I got a recording of this, it's on my website, you can see it. He said they would always take that bean fate kid every day, all day, every time. And his point was, like, to be an innovator, you're disrupting. And a lot of people don't understand what that means. Like, having run a software company in the final mile reverse logistics world, where I would turn up companies and change everything. And when you do that, when you disrupt, you make people upset, right? And so you got to be able to take it. You got to be able to be resilient. There's another buzzword, but what does that mean? That means, like, you're in a very challenging position and you can't give up if you want success. And, like, rural kids, the way they are brought up in a way that they have to be resilient. They have to figure stuff out because that's what their parents are doing. If you're a farmer and something breaks down and you're 2 hours away from the nearest urban setting, you gotta bring that crop in. You gotta harvest it in. You can't sit there and wait for whoever to show up and get it done. Or if you're an oil and gas worker and there's something wrong with the well, you gotta figure that out. And so you figure it out. So what he's talking about is this natural thing within rural communities that is innovative. On the other side of the coin, like Vancouver didn't used to be this way, and I'm sorry to pick on you, Vancouver, but, like, that's what I know. It didn't used to be this way. There was I guess it was smaller, it was easier, but there was more resilience brought into the kids. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not lying. I know a kid who, when they graduated from high school, was given a P1 McLaren. And good, great. That kid knows nothing about challenge in life. Like, to me, that should be something that you work hard and you fight hard to get. But he just got everything in life. What's the point?
You realize that you've given us a great framework to talk about the conference.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about the conference.
Because, Gord, the conference was not successful. Remember before
the first one?
Well, when we talked about, we were planning a conference as the Innovation Council. We launched it. We set the date. We didn't really understand who the market was. We didn't realize that we didn't have an audience for it. Yep. And that was the reason and so we ended up having to cancel it. And we thought, we'll just start small. We'll start something called Innovation Conversations. And our first guest was Dr. Eric Grimson from MIT. And he was an Estevan, from Estevan, who grew up here, who went to school, who had to leave and go to school, and was extremely successful. And that's a very common story, whether it's from Estevan or other rural centers where your brightest they have so much potential and they go away and have great success in the world. That's not uncommon. But so we decided to start these innovation conversations to build a little bit of a buzz, to get people interested in what are we even doing here? What is innovation? What is a center of innovation? What's a tech hub? So it became...
I still don't know.
Well, look, people are starting to show up at least.
Yep.
So at the beginning, we hosted this high-profile individual from MIT, and he came and gave an academic talk. I don't think there had ever been an academic talk in the town of Estevan, but we had one, and we said, let's do some more. Let's have some more academic talks. And that was the intention. We had Dr. Aaron Janae from Saskatoon. He talked about the solar flower. He talked about accomplishments that were happening up in Saskatoon.
That solar flower, let's pause on that for 1 second, because we went over that really, really quickly. But I think there's a story in there that I just want to talk about that I think would resonate to a lot of people in rural communities. Let's be honest. If you were coming into a rural community that's culture is deep into oil and gas, coal, and then you can translate that to whatever your rural community, his culture is based on. And it's now being disrupted, right? And so Aaron had created this amazing setup at one of the high schools in Saskatoon where they brought in a solar flower. I think it's a Siemens solar flower, yeah. And it's this flower that follows the sun along, and it was attached to a microgrid where the kids in the school could learn more about all of that process. And my crazy idea, not really understanding because I was new to rural community, was like, yeah, let's get one. And I call you up and I'm like, Tanya, I want to get a solar flower because it will do all these wonderful things. The lesson there is that to come in guns blazing, maybe it's not the right thing to do. Like, community buy-in is huge.
Yeah,
right?
we needed to be resilient. We needed to
Yeah.
not succeed 100%,
Yeah.
and then build a little interest. Get more of these of our speakers. Get people that, oh, are you having another one of your events? What's is it 3D printing? Oh, that seems interesting.
Yeah, the 3D printing one's
Right?
huge.
So
Yes.
people show up, they start following on the social media, they start getting excited. And then when you announce a conference, and then when you start telling people about the guest list and the people that will be joining us in Estevan to learn about innovation, disruption, rural uh, uh, endeavors, rural economic development, suddenly you get people coming to your conference and people talking about your conference and having FOMO because they missed the conference. So what was your favorite part of the conference that we held in
There's
September?
so many pieces. I think the most entertaining piece, and just also powerful piece was Aaron. Sorry, I'm going to look up his name because I'm sorry, Aaron.
Okay.
Thank you. Republican Aaron Pinkleton from House Representative from Arkansas. And he was so kind because it's election season, like it was September and they were about to go into elections in November. So he is so kind to come up here. And what was important to him to come up here is that Clarksville, Arkansas is on the same path as us. And I wanted to show how it's not just, it's so easy in your world to get in your own bubble and think that it's only happening for you. I wanted to show that it's happening for everyone, and two different countries, in two different, like spaces and places. What I really liked about him that really talked about.
And you might want to mention that they went through cold transition as well.
Yeah, totally, and successfully.
Yeah.
Now they're killing it. But what he said is they came from a point of view at the very beginning of all that. He said, no one in Washington is thinking about how to save Clarksville. And it's the same thing. No one in Ottawa is thinking how to save Estevan. And you can translate that to your community, to your nation's capital. The point is like we could curl up in a ball and get the fetal position. So no. The point is like come to that realization, and then move on with it.
Well,
like,
and
let's go.
I would even argue that you could. It's not even to be fearful, right? I mean, we've had the chance now to get used to this idea since the innovation, because all these years to get used to the idea of what's coming, what we can see, what we're aware of, what changes we know are happening. And so rather than being negative or being afraid, to change, to be optimistic, to look for opportunity and to be proactive and really and not invest, but invest our energy in the economic development piece or innovative ideas like, again, applied research at a college or starting computer science through a project that's only done.
And some of the ideas too that was hilarious for us, and this might resonate with other people in rural communities. He goes, "Yeah, we tried to get a data center. It didn't work the first time because we had problems with our I think it was a state utility. I'm not sure exactly. I can't remember exactly how it works in Arkansas, but they had a problem with that, and we all burst out laughing because we had the same opportunity. We could get a data center, and same problem. Our utility ran into issue. Blah blah blah." But the second time around, they got it. And what Aaron did, from what I understand, in his position of power, is create a governance, a tax structure that brought in a lot of that. And from what I understand, they're looking at solar data centers. Maybe I'll reach out to Aaron and see if he can come on this and fill in the gaps. But they're turning agricultural waste into hydrogen. They're doing some pretty neat stuff down there. So I think all of us, because we had people from rural communities across Canada and in the States, and we even had one person from the UK show up, and the whole room burst out laughing because all of us had been through that same challenge. And I think that also speaks to the fact that like it's so easy to dismiss rural communities with ideas that will help their community out. So I thought that was really good. But the other biggest thing I loved the most, let's get back to like, I think the biggest win was your students. From I had asked, so just to fill in the gap, back when I was running IDS, the software company, I would do a postmortem on attending me or a salesperson attending a conference by how many new contacts you had, right? And I know as human beings, when we go to a conference or a new social thing, we gravitate to people that we know, right? And those two collide, right? It's so, yeah. But the point is you got to meet new people. So I said, I want to create a system, and I kept it system neutral, meaning I didn't want to provide a solution. I kept it wide open. I want you guys to provide a solution where we can force new people to meet new people. Because then I know if they meet new people, no contacts, when they go back, it'll be successful. And so you guys created a program.
Our first project for a training through project with our computer science students, which was sponsored by RBC, so we even got someone to pay for it, right? Was an app that was created by the students that was a group matchmaking app. And so everyone who attended the conference kindly offered up their LinkedIn accounts, and the students were able to, through AI, read the LinkedIn profiles and create these groupings based on the profiles of people that should be sitting together at certain tables. So during coffee breaks at the conference, we would put up on the large screens at the conference the names of the individuals who should have a match. Then we put up a couple prompt questions, and then people sat together at their tables and were introduced to people and they weren't always sure why there was a fit. And so I was with someone in education, and I was with someone in energy, or someone from, again, the States. And we weren't really sure why, but again, it offered us that new opportunity. And so we also took the opportunity to provide the students with their graduation certificates that day. And the students, as part of their graduation, were required, or as part of their classwork, were required to present. And so there was what they call a level 5 educational experience, which was to present before a responsive audience, an audience who actually was engaged in the process, because of course they were receiving that app that we taught, that they produced. So the presentations from the students, the level of engagement and their sharing and their enthusiasm for the project, and how much they enjoyed their instructor, Ryan, to me, that was the highlight as well. But for the attendees, they could see innovation in action.
I just remember getting up on stage and saying, okay, guys, we have to move on. It's time to get the next speaker up. And they're like, no, I'm having a wonderful conversation with people I didn't know. And then also the feedback, it was just like, your students created this program? Like, this is amazing. This AI program got these groups together, and it really worked. I've never seen this kind of matchmaking thing. And I kept hearing, even to this day, almost, what are we, 6 months later, how amazing that was. So, yeah, I think, it's been an hour. You and I could go on and on.
We definitely have some philosophical conversations. Yeah.
We're going to do this. We're going to bring in some people who are working on some of our projects, some rural innovators. Actually, there is one thing. Let's bookend the innovation conversations that we had. So we had these innovation conversations where we started off at one bookend with Eric, right? Mm-hmm. And then we had all these coming through. And the idea is to ramp us up to this innovation conference for Rural Innovation
Conference.
But that bookend in the middle, at the other side, was Jeff Sandquist, right? And I'm sorry, Jeff, I 100% know you will be listening to this, and I didn't mean to leave you to the end. But he put on...
I think you should introduce who Jeff Sandquist is.
Okay, Jeff Sandquist, who was a VP for Microsoft. He's from here, from Estevan. VP of Microsoft. VP, I think, of Twitter when it was decent. Just leave it at that. And now he's involved with Automatic, which runs WordPress. And he's looking at other things. So in a rural...
He was the keynote speaker at our meeting.
He was, yeah, but in a rural community, he learned all these skills to have a very successful technology career. So he was a keynote speaker in a dinner between the 2 days to talk about that. And I love that, because when people challenge us about rural community and innovation technology, we started off with Eric, Chancellor of MIT. And in that year, we ended up with Jeff Sandquist, VP Microsoft, and all that stuff. Like, it really talks to that whole thing. But what I liked about Jeff is he talked about some of the challenges that we were facing in a new way, and like the data center. He kept on. It was great to look at certain government officials and him saying, the data centers are good, type of thing. That was awesome. But he also just talked about like the things that he learned in growing up in a rural community and how that translated to a successful career. So I thought that was good. But okay, so let's end it here with this first episode. Thank you so much. We're going to have more. We're going to talk about, we're going to get down into some of the nitty gritties. Like maybe Jeff will come on again. We'll talk about some of the things that we're doing in Estevan. I'm going to ask people from other communities outside to come and talk to this. If you are a listener and you're in a rural community and you have something that you would love to highlight, please reach out to us. Contact information is below in our content details. If you're listening to us, just go to sethub, sethub.ca, and you'll find our contact details there. So thank you, Tanya.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's always fun. We always can just take our conversations in 100 different directions. So this is where it ended up today.
Yeah, thank you.